I'd like to call the Liberty Elementary School District organizational meeting to order, 5:30 p.m. on January 8th, 2024. First item of business is our call to order. Recognize that all 5 board members are present. Board Member Parks, Aguirre, Bixler, Kenyon, and myself, Michael Todd. Next item will be 1.2, Pledge of Allegiance. Board Member Kenyon, can you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our next item is item 1.3, the approval of the election of board president.
Mr. President, I'd like to nominate Michael Todd as board president.
Mr. President, I had a question about this item. Last year, this meeting was on a separate day, and there seemed to be quite a bit of a fuss that it needed to be that way. But now all of a sudden this year, it's on the same day as a regular meeting. Is there any particular reason why that is?
Not for me. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second.
President Todd, I had
Yes,
a
sir.
question,
What's your question?
and it was that I didn't hear an answer.
I said there was no reason for me. I don't know if any other board member had any.
Yeah, Member Aguirre and Clyde can speak to this. I think in the statute, it just speaks to a date.
Maybe I could respond to that. There's no requirement that it be on a separate day.
I agree 100% with you. What I am saying is a precedence was set last year of that
Precedence
this
doesn't
meeting.
mean anything on this.
Oh, it doesn't, precedence doesn't mean anything.
Not on this issue.
Oh, not, never?
Nope.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
Okay, members, we have a motion and a second. When I call your name, please specify your vote. Board Member Parks?
Aye.
Board Member Aguirre?
Nope.
Board Member Bixler?
Nay.
Board Member Kenyon?
Aye.
I'm also an aye. We will show that. Approve 3 yes, 2 no. Our next item will be the approval of the board president. Board vice president. My apologies. Item 1.4, approval of election of board vice president.
Mr. President, I make a motion to nominate Mr. Brian Parks for the vice president beginning January 8th, 2024.
Mr. President, I'd like to nominate
We
Ms.
have a
Bixler.
motion.
Second.
Sir, we have a motion. We can do nothing until we
Second.
have a second and a vote. I will second the motion to move forward. I think Board Member Parks, you seconded as well, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Take your second. When I call your name, please specify your vote. Board Member Parks.
Aye.
Board Member Aguirre.
No.
Board Member Bixler.
Nay.
Board Member Kenyon.
Aye.
I'm also an aye. We will show that approved 3 yes votes, 2 no. Congratulations, Board Member Parks, as the new vice president. Next up will be item 2.1, adjourn of the board organizational meeting.
Mr. President, I motion that we adjourn the board organizational meeting.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the organizational meeting. If there's no discussion, I will call for your vote. Board Member Parks.
Aye.
Board Member Aguirre.
Yes.
Board Member Bixler.
Aye.
Board Member Kenyon.
Aye.
I'm also an aye. We will show that approved 5 yes, 0 no. Okay, we'll show that meeting is now adjourned. We'll go to the opening of the regular meeting. I'll call the regular meeting to order at 5:34 p.m. today, January 8th. Again, all 5 board members are still present. Board Member Parks, Board Member Aguirre, Board Member Bixler, Board Member Kenyon, and myself, Michael Todd. Go to item 3.2, Pledge of Allegiance one more time. Board Member Bixler, if you can help us with that, I'd appreciate it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is 3.3, approve the regular agenda.
Mr. President, I'll motion to approve the regular agenda consistent with Board Policy BEDB. Temporarily suspend governing board policy, this agenda may be inconsistent, and limit the agenda item discussion to 3 minutes for each board member.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and I have a second. Are you limiting all discussion to 3 minutes?
For each agenda item, for each board member.
Okay. I have a motion, I have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for your vote. Board Member Parks.
Aye.
Board Member Aguirre.
No.
Board Member Bixler.
No.
Board Member Kenyon.
Aye.
I'm also, I will show that proof 3 yes, 2 no. Next up will be item 4.1, Governing Board Report. Start at the end again, Vice President Parks.
I have nothing at this point, Mr. President.
Board Member Aguirre.
Nothing.
Board Member Bixler.
Yes, since the last meeting, regular board meeting, we've had lots go on. You would expect that as far as the holiday season we have, and absolutely was. I would just like to really congratulate all of the campuses for being available and open for the community. You really stepped up. The turnout at all the events I went to, and there were 7 of them, all were really packed. Lots of parents there, lots of enthusiasm. Terrific work by the staffs on the campuses. So thank you so much for making this roll up into the holidays really, really exciting here on this campus and being available to the community. That can't tell you how important I think that is. But just running through it real quickly, went to Blue Horizons, their winter festival, Estrella Mountain, their Cookies Carolyn and Cocoa, went to Rainbow Valley, their winter wonderland, back over to Estrella Mountain for their choir tour of the district office. Parmia was here, which was really, really good. Then over to the spelling bee at Estrella Mountain, which was real exciting. Then over to the first grade music program at Blue Horizons once again, and then finally topped it off with the district office holiday lunch, which was so much fun, great food, wonderful sweater contest. One of the winners is sitting here in the audience right now. And finally, the funniest white elephant exchange. It was just great. So congratulations, district. You've done a wonderful job leading into the holidays.
Over the last couple weeks, I've seen a lot going on in the district, and I can echo a lot of what Board Member Bixler is saying. Is I'm very proud of this district and all the campuses for what they've done, all the different events they set up. I was only able to make it a few of them, but Blue Horizons, their first grade musical was just hilarious, funny. You know, you get a bunch of first graders on the stage and you never know what they're going to do. So it was a lot of fun. And then I also got to make it over to Liberty's, I forget what they call it, but basically their winter show, their Christmas show. And it was excellent. So it was really, really good seeing these. So I hope everybody had a really good Christmas, really good New Year's, and looking forward to everything jumping back in the swing of things. Just a quick reminder, next Monday, there's no school. So if you're online listening, a teacher, parent, just remember there's no school, and I hope you guys enjoy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Thank you.
Okay, I'll make mine brief too. I certainly wanted to echo Board Member Bixler's comments. He always does a great job. Couple other things. Just want to thank Blue Horizons. I was invited. They did a kickball tournament on their last day of school before break. I was invited out to throw out the first pitch. I was close to a strike. I rolled it close to home plate. I'm an umpire in another life. I'll say it was a strike. Everybody can argue with me, but I think it was good enough. But it was a great time. It was a little cold that morning, but what a great job they did. All the staff, the students just had a great time. So it was nice to see that. That's going to become an annual event for that campus, and it's exciting to see one of our new campuses start creating some culture and tradition early on. So, and also made it several of the different school performances, and then as well as the district office lunch. And I just wanted to say to the staff that put together the little Christmas video with we all made it into a a jingle of some sort. They were fantastic. All the board members were highlighted, all the district staff, and just a great time. And last but not least, I don't know if anybody was here, but we had an electric school bus out front earlier just to start learning about that technology. So I certainly thank RWC for bringing that out for us. We've met with them when I was at the school board conference. They were there. That bus is going out to Palominas School District, out south and west of here in the kind of middle of nowhere, more so than we are even. But they're embracing that technology, and it's something that I think the rest of the world is looking at. So it's always good for board members and staff to be exploring what's out there on the horizon. Whether we do it or not, it's another topic, but to look at it and be familiar was great. So I'd like to thank them. So that'll wrap up my update. Next, we'll move on to 5.1, the attendance and enrollment reports and school newsletter. Dr. Monroe.
Yes, thank you, President Todd, members of the board. Happy New Year. Welcome back. Hope you had a great break, as well as all of our Liberty community and family. Congratulations, President Todd and Vice President Parks. Look forward to working with this board another calendar year and moving the district in a positive direction forward. So attached are the school newsletters filled with lots of great events and our enrollment from last month. Hot off the press from John Moreno. Later this afternoon, I just wanted to let the board know over the break with regards to enrollment, we had 17 students withdraw. However, we had 33 enroll. So that's kind of a net positive of 16. So a lot of times when people are moving or switching schools for whatever reason, they use that Christmas break, that holiday break. But it's nice to be on the growth end of it. So we're plus 16, and maybe in the board update later this week, maybe we'll be plus 20 or 25. So, but yeah, any questions on the enrollment or school newsletters, they're presented there for the board.
Any questions?
Mr. President, I don't really have a question. I do have a statement, and is I'm really happy to see the trending upward of our attendance rate. That's real important, especially as we start to roll into the state testing, which will be coming up very quickly here. We need every child here every single day. You are not being instructed if you aren't here. We know for a fact that students learn when they're here. Please do everything you can to keep your children here in our classes. That was it.
Thank you. Next will be item 5.2, Mr. Rick Brammer from Applied Economics, giving us the demographics update. Welcome back. Good to see you again.
Yes, thank you very much, President Todd, Vice President Parks, congratulations. Members of the board, Dr. Monroe, nice to see all of you, distinguished guests. I don't know how to get this exactly.
Hey, Rick, just do the best you can in speaking to the mic. It's real
Okay.
sensitive, so do your best to speak into there so everyone can hear it, especially at home.
Okay, I'll try to do that. We've been doing the same basic scope of the work for the district for several years. I know we've got, one board member that hasn't heard any of this before, so I will try to, slow down in certain spots, but I know you've got a really full agenda, and so we'll try to keep it moving for you. But the scope of work in terms includes, obviously thorough analysis of our enrollment data, not only the total, but the grade level distribution and the geographic distribution. And then also what's going on with enrollment in the alternative providers in the area. The characteristics of the existing population. You got a fairly substantial existing population now. And so what's going on with them? They're aging and having less children while you're having new houses that are having new children. So there's a lot of balancing going on, offsetting going on at this point. And it's really important for us to track it. Obviously, residential development is big here. Don Graves with our office standing next to me is our residential development expert. He's the one who meets with the planners and the builders and the developers and tries to decipher what's really going to happen next versus, maybe some of the chest pounding that goes on with some projects too. So, and then we do two different enrollment models, a district level, top down. How does the district fit into the Southwest Valley and how does that fit into Metro Phoenix? And then the one that we really have spent the most time, grooming as a business is the bottom up. So we're looking at, in this case, I think it's about 160 areas within the district where we track enrollment year after year after year using these geographies, which don't change even when we open and close a school. We can add geographies as we need to as growth occurs, but these are the building blocks. And so we're looking at almost really what's happening at practically the neighborhood level, and balancing out what those two things are telling us. We'll start right at the top with the district enrollment trends. And so this is looking back over 23 years of enrollment, where the blue bar is 40th day head count. It's not ADM. It won't match some of the other data you're seeing, but it's apples to apples every single year on the 40th day. This is how many were enrolled. And then the red squiggly line is the year-over-year percent change. And you can see the massive growth that you all had in the early 2000s prior to the Great Recession. And then, of course, the fall for a few years thereafterward as houses became vacant. And as they turned over during that period, a lot of them didn't turn over to be with families again. They turned over to be with investors and people from out of town who were older were buying these as income properties. And so it changed the demographics. And not only, even once they reoccupied, it wasn't the same group that was here before. But nonetheless, because of the housing going on and the relative affordability compared to the rest of the valley, we've seen steady growth in the school-age population and enrollment. And I'll separate those two because we're going to talk a lot tonight about choice, because that's what's the name of the game these days. So this year, in fact, in terms of this measurement here, we were down 85 students year over year from last year. Almost all of that decline was in kindergarten and first grade. And we're going to talk about the connection between that and the ESA program that you see on television every night. So we've been in also what happened this year was that we kind of hit a lull between construction projects. And Don's going to talk about how, in terms of lagged building permits from the year before, we only brought on about 200 housing units this year compared to 1,000 or 1,200 in some years. So we're always losing some students to alternative providers, but when when the group of new ones coming in gets really small, then all of a sudden it pushes you negative. And that's kind of essentially what happened this year. So I see it as temporary, but it definitely was an occurrence. And if you look at the next way we look at the enrollment is broken down into grade groups. So K2, 3, 5, 6, 8. And you can see during the big growth period in the 2000s, they all grew at pretty much the same rate. And then once we got into the lower growth, you see the 6-8 group emerge as the larger group. And it's because of a lot of things, the aging of the population who moved in while it was growing like this. And it's also the price structure and the location of a lot of the housing in the district. South of the river, a little more remote, move-up housing market. Move-up housing market means somewhat older kids. And so we've seen that trend be consistent up until like 2020. Well, 2020 was, the COVID year. So, but 21 and then 22 also, you can see very steep growth in the K2, 3, 5 groups. Those are the ones that lead the way. Those are the ones that push enrollment up. And then all of a sudden this year, boom. Part of that is because the charters in the district grew, and part of it is because of the expansion of the ESA program. So I get behind here. I'm sorry about that. So we look at the distribution of enrollment, as I said, in these planning grids. And in this case, it's just a density map, where it's in terms of the colors or in terms of students per square mile. The actual little number in there is the actual number of K-8 students you're enrolling from each one of those areas this year. And obviously it's an interesting distribution with the north and the south, and it creates challenges for transportation and facility planning and those kinds of things, but you're no strangers to it. This is kind of the way it's been. What we're really more interested in is, where it's changing. So in this map, if it's blue, it's actually declined in enrollment over the last 5 years. And if it's red, it's grown. And if you know where, you personally know where housing is being built, much of the red coincides with where new rooftops have been going up. You see down in the Australia area, however, large parts of the development where enrollment is in decline. And a lot of that is just the aging of the population who moved in initially, no more, no less. And that's going to always be a factor that we deal with. And in fact, we know that from the peak of enrollment from any given subdivision to where it kind of bottoms out demographically, we're looking at about a 30 to 35%, delta. So this is a normal occurrence. We also are tracking it in the very near term. So this is just the last year. So just year over year, since we were down 85 and, instead of being up, I wanted to see kind of where that was occurring. So what I saw was essentially in the Freedom Elementary area, where we've got a lot of competition, a lot of blue. The Roosevelt School up there has been, the Great Hearts Roosevelt Prep is adding more grades and expanding still. And then, like I said, down in the south, in the Australia area, continue to decline. And part of that is driven again by our demographics. And so if we look at the total population of the district, now up to around 48,000 people. That's my current year estimate. That's total population. But you can see in the last 13 years that the share of the population that is preschool and elementary, under 5 and 5 to 13, has shrunk from 24% to 19.6%. So basically a quarter to a fifth is kind of the way I round it off. So there's less persons, the smaller share of the population that is school aged. And you can see that the growth rates are highest as you get to the older cohorts. And in fact, between 2010 and 2020, the population 65 and up grew at an annual compound rate of 12% for the entire decade. And that's an explosion right there. I mean, and so you still have growth in the other categories, but it really speaks to that shift in the demographics that we were talking about. And a lot of it's driven, at least from where we come from and doing our statistical analysis, is you look at the share of the householders that are in these 25 to 34 and 35 to 44, age cohorts, because those are the ones that make the babies and makes the students. And so again, it sort of parallels what we're seeing with the school-age population, where that has fallen from 40% of district households down to a third, 33% of district households. So we do have that, factor going on at the same time. A lot of that is driven by our recent experience, both at the state level and nationally, with birth rates. And this is a very complicated chart, and I'm not going to spend too awful much time with it. And I'm only speaking about the red line, which is the state average. But you can see the massive decline that we had during the Great Recession in the birth rate, which at that time brought us down to the lowest level on record. And so when it flattened after that, the economy started to improve. We actually thought it might tick upwards, but the exact opposite happened. And people decided, because of the impact of the recession and what they saw themselves and their parents go through, to put off the decision to have children until they're later in life. The average age at first birth, it went up by 5 years in a period of 10. So it created this massive, dip, if you will, in the population. And it's been extreme enough that in Arizona, the state demographer is not projecting any increase in the population under 18 until at least 2030. Because this is still rolling through us, in spite of the fact that we're a growing state. So there are people coming in from outside that are offsetting some of that. But this is a big hole. And just look at the gross numbers. And I'm just going to go from the beginning to the end. But when this started, there was 102,700 births in the state of Arizona in the year 2006. And in the year 2022, there was 76,000 births. So the total population has gone up considerably during that period, and the number of births is down by about 30%, 25 or 30%. And we've seen it in maternity wards. We've seen hospitals downsize. It's just part of what we're dealing with, in the population curve. So there's kind of less out there, for all the educational providers. Okay. Our friends in the charter school business are remaining fairly active in your area. The growth hasn't been leaps and bounds like it was if you look back in the early teens, where we were getting multi-hundred students per year going into some of these schools. This year, though, they were just the ones located in the district. We're up by a net of 262, while you were down by 85. So it's still a force. It's still something that we're dealing with. The interesting thing was, to me, and I'll get to it again in the future, is that we were really feeling like we had the impact of charters dialed in. Our projections have been holding pretty good. We knew what was going to happen, whereas the ESA has introduced a whole new thing. Now we've got a whole nother category of competition to think about and measure and figure out who's going to participate in it and how long they're going to participate in it. You know, a lot of people taking money to home educate their kindergartners. Well, are they going to, are they really going to do that in first grade, or are they going to come back to you, and expect you to finish the job? So there's a lot of questions there right now, and the lack of data from the state at this point is really an issue. We don't have anything official since fourth quarter of last fiscal year. So we definitely need to be seeing what's going on with that program, because by my projections, it'll exceed 100,000 students before they can stop it, even if they start capping it now. So that's something to keep in mind. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox for a minute and let Don talk about housing.
The chart here shows, about the 8,000. Move on. Oh. Whoa, that's not good. We got it. You can see it on your monitors? Yeah. Okay. What I wanted to mention about this, there's about 8,000 units been, built in the last 10 years. The part that's probably pertinent to you is the last two bars, where those bars, drop down so much. Most of this is because, there's the fiscal problems going on with, buying a house right now. And that has also bled into the fact that projects that are moving forward had also been slowed down. So you've got two things going on. One, just the market in general with people not buying houses. And two, the people wanting to build houses are not in a rush to be doing that. So you've got this gap between places that have been built out and new places that aren't quite ready yet. So that's part of what's going on. You're going to see the bars next year go back up some, although it'll take a while to recover. The building permits we have, you'll see probably better on your monitors. The blue dots, or the little blue squares, indicate a building permit. Each one of those is a single-family house. And the thing that's probably important to point out is that you have essentially two sections of your district. You have north of the Gila River and south of the Gila River. And this is kind of how I'm looking at it, is Rick does it a little bit more detailed, but I look at north and south. And right now, and for the last several years, you're running basically about 50-50. North of the river, south of the river. It jumps up and down, but roughly you're looking at about 50% each way. And that's what we're seeing. Right now it's like 53% to 47%. And this is kind of how it's been going for the last few years. The residential potential, and hopefully you can see it on your screens better than here, we've got a couple of things that are changing. Well, one is you've still got about 16,000 unit potential coming on. But the other thing that I want to point out about this particular chart is something you haven't had before is multifamily. And you'll see the orange part of the bar on this chart is multifamily. You've got right now 519 single-family rental projects, or single-family rental units in 3 projects, one by Sundance, one by Verado, and another one down on the Highway 85 off to the east. And you're going to see more multifamily coming on. You're not going to get a huge amount of it, but it's something you haven't had before. Now you're going to. And the single-family rentals, this is a little confusing because single-family rentals we consider multifamily, basically because it's a lot of times the way they're described is a horizontal apartment. They act like multifamily in the way that they're rented. So despite what the structure itself is, we think of them as multifamily. And that's going to be a large part of your multifamily moving forward.
Are you talking about the rental-only communities?
Yes,
Okay, so,
that's what you have right now. We got 3 of them under construction, and yeah,
Okay.
that's what they are.
those are rental-only, correct? They're homes, but that's what you're saying? You guys
Correct.
classify them as apartments or condos, whatever?
Yes, I mean,
Okay.
we treat them that way because basically they're rented that way.
They're
It's just
rented, right.
instead
They'll
of
never
having
own
the-
them.
Instead of having the units on top of each other, they're just spread out.
Spread out, okay, thank you.
If we come up to the land use map, this basically just shows, the yellow is single family, the orange, which is kind of hard to see, but the orange is multifamily, and you'll see it spatially up to the north. There's different places. If you go up to this project up just south of Verado, that had been planned for business park, and some of that's going to end up being multifamily. And you're going to have, this is something you're going to see valley-wide. Retail corners are going to be multifamily. Commercial, in an office, a lot of times is going multifamily. But still, what you have mostly is single family. We don't have anything colored in the north part of the district and to the west part. This is in the city of Buckeye, so you've got different infrastructure issues going on there. If the market improves enough, you might have some movement going on there, but right now we're not showing anything there. The next map with the timing, we color code this based on when it's going to be building. When it's colored in red, it means it's active already. If it's a dark orange, that means it's coming online soon, and the lighter orange is a little, 3 or 4 years out. The yellow is a little farther out. When I mentioned about currently, it's about 50-50, north and south of the river. What we have in the north, we have the Citrus Road corridor that's coming online and a lot of projects that are moving forward. What we're going to have, or what we are forecasting to have in the next 5 years, this northern part of the district is going to pick up to where it's closer to 60% of the total housing growth you're having. But what happens in the second half of the projection period is that areas in Estrella, which is under new management, and so there's new planning going on there. So what happens is we start building out the projects in the north at the same time that Estrella is going to be picking up. And in about the last half of the projection period, we get down to 7 or 8 years, you're going to have about 70 to 80% of your total growth happening down in the Estrella area as you're building out the areas in the north. So this 50-50 shift is only going to be true for another couple of years, and then we're going to have some shifting north and south going on.
Thanks, Tom. All right, let me get caught up to the page we're on so I could read it. So we try to turn all of this into projections, of course, of first school-age population and then of enrollment. And we're going to talk about how those are different. But Don is showing total new permits, housing units being permitted over the next 10 years, about 13,000 or so. We think that'll result in about 11,300 households, which is just an occupied housing unit. You see the big bump this year going from 300 to 1,100? That's because of these 500 rental units that are coming online. They're part of that. So the single family market is going to bounce back a little bit, but the big jump from this year to next is those built to rent units that he was talking about, which we know will not all occupy at the same time. So you'll see we're ticking down occupancy rates temporarily because that's too many to put on the market in 1 year. We know they won't all get occupied the first year. So we have to account for that. And then what we do is we take the households and we stratify them by those age groups that I was showing you before on the census table, drilling in to see how many 25 to 30, 34 and 35 to 44s. And we use that information to turn households into school-age population. Now, when you look at 2010 and 2020, those are actual census numbers. In between ours are modeling interpolation in between. But at present time, in this year, 23-24, there's 15,593 households. There's a total school-age population. That is persons aged 5 to 13 living in the district, whether they go to your school or any school at all. That's 6,293. Now, we have enrollment of 4,330, which means that there's about a 2,000 or so student difference, which corresponds very closely to the charter school enrollment that we have in the district. No big, again, no big mystery. But then carrying it on across, we're also measuring what we call service rate. So what share of the students that actually live in the district are you serving? So then we deduct the 344 that are coming to us from outside the district. So we get down to our in-district enrollment of 3988, which is 63.3% of the 6293 school-age population. So I'm not going to go over row by row, but I want you to understand how the calculation works and that we're actively trending for better or for worse and monitoring this service rate because, it's the demographics, quite honestly. Don's really good at households and I'm decent at figuring out school-age population. The big challenge these days has been how many are we going to serve? And every time we get a handle on it, they change the rules. So it's been kind of exciting. But in general, we're expecting that service rate to continue to decline. So in graphic form, you'll see the red bars are the K-8 enrollment, the blue bars are the school-age population, and basically the service rate, the ratio between the two, is the green line. And so you can see that that's been ticking down at the rate of about 0.75% per year. So these projections build that in. And that's not a sure thing, high or low. It doesn't have to go down that much. We don't know. They keep, like I said, keep changing the rules. It's also gotten harder for new charter schools to open. Land's expensive, money is expensive. So we're not seeing, leaps and bounds of growth in terms of new schools there either. So this is the biggest, you might say, guess in the entire analysis that we do is this service rate thing. And if you hold your service rate at the current level, instead of it continuing to decline by 0.75% per year, it can mean several hundred or 500 or 600 more students in 10 years. It's that important. So I just want you to understand that's issues hanging it out there. We're being conservative by assuming it's going to continue to decline. We do the projections, obviously, not just total enrollment, but enrollment by cohort. We showed 85 lost this year, 112 growth next year, 2.6%. Returning, I think, to the 4 to 5% range in the year shortly after that. One of the big things that I'm interested to see is, as Don pointed out, you haven't had a whole lot of multifamily before. You certainly haven't had any of these. And these are weird because it depends on the community they go into. Some places you get no kids out of them at all, and some places you do. And it just really, I'm going to be anxious when we can get enrollment data next year or two and see what we're getting out of those. But my own opinion is that in the near term, while interest rates continue to be high, we're going to see some families in those places. Down the road, if interest rates reduce, they may all move into houses in the area. But I think in the near term, we're going to get a student impact out of those. So that's the main thing. We look just for, especially Mr. Is it Kenyon? For your edification, I guess. We look at this relationship between then where kids live versus where they go to school, because that's the other thing that we have to account for when we're doing projections by school. And so this just is a breakdown that shows that relationship. So Australia Mountain has 350 kids who live in their attendance area, plus 5 from Freedom, plus a plus. So you get to the outside, they get 53, which gives them total attendance of 501. in spite of the fact that 435 students come from that area. So they're a net gainer of 66. And because of the 344 coming in from outside of the district, all of the schools are a net gainer, with the exception of Rainbow Valley. And really, that's not a huge movement. You don't have as much movement in your district as some, but that's also due to the geographic dispersion of your campuses. And then we do the projections. Like I said, I'm not going to dwell on these, but Don was talking about the first 5 years of the projection period. You see all the red up in the north in that Citrus Road corridor. A little bit of obviously red in the south, but then even more red in the south when you get into that second period. That eastern part of Australia is really going to open up. And like as Don said, new management there, I think, has a new spark in trying to bring some more land to the market. It's been a little slow in the past. So we'll see. So we do the projections then two ways. Well, not two ways. We do them by attendance area, really. And then we use that relationship you saw to do it by school. And generally, they both say the same thing. Obviously, we've had in the next 5 years, we've got most of our growth looking in the Las Brisas and the Liberty attendance areas, 300 versus 200 or so students. And then you see the big shift in the second period, where 500 students in the West Star area, and then another 188 in the Australia area. So that's when you see that 70, 80% shift heading down into the Southland. And those are pretty much reflected in the school numbers as well. And I'm not going to spend the time to go in detail in any of these numbers, but I wanted you to understand at least where they came from. So the district is kind of currently experiencing a positive enrollment growth. We know why, but compared to what we've seen in the last few years, housing unit additions are down. And it's going to be a little bit in the near term, dependent upon who does move into some of these, because that's a lot of the market coming up in the next year. We have most of the new construction, as Don was saying, in the north half of the district in the near term, but switching down to the south. Another bullet about the impact perhaps of the single family rentals. I said is one of the most variable things that we've had to predict, but given your area, I think it's going to make a difference. The recent expansion of the SA program has added a new wrinkle to doing these projections. It's like the introduction of charter schools all over again in some way. And the grade distribution of who's taking the ESAs is way uneven. So, and I don't have data for this year, but last year it was 7,000 kindergartners and 5,000 first graders. And so the question is, will that 7,000 continue forward, or will they come back? And so will that drop be permanent, or was that just because that's who you start off in kindergarten and keep going? So that's a really, I'm sorry to say, but it's a wild card for us too, because we don't have a track record with it. And until we get guidance about when or if the program will be capped, we're not going to know. And all that said, you guys are definitely positioned. I mean, there's growth, there's houses underway, there's a lot of growth potential in the future. So it's not a matter of whether you're going to have growth or not. It's really just a matter of how much and when. And if we could understand the rules we were playing by, we might actually know that answer a little better. But sorry I went a little over, Dr. Monroe, but I'll take questions.
Members, any questions?
Yeah, real quick, President Todd. It appears to me, as we're adding on more schools here, I know there's at least one in the works and we're planning on two. It looks like the first one needs to definitely be in the north.
Correct.
And then as we move over the next, say, 4 years to the south, this really helps our kind of get our arms around where our projections are and where we should be putting these schools at. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think it's great because that. You don't know the exact year, but at least you have, what order things are going to happen in so you can plan accordingly.
Thank you.
Any
Mine
additional
was
questions?
The same question of, it seems in your opinion that if we're going to build a school, we should probably go ahead and do it in the north right now. Mm-hmm. And then possibly 2 to 3 years, have one in the south built at that point also.
And we'll see how the market recovers. I'm really anxious. I mean, that second one might be 4, 5, 6 too. I mean, we don't really know at this point. We're gonna, we're projecting it's gonna recover. The interest rates are supposed to come down a couple, 3 times next year. People seem to be getting used to the idea that they're not gonna get a 3% mortgage anymore. So if we can get it down to 5, maybe we can bring the market back to life.
And Dr. Monroe, does that line up with what we're thinking as far as our land that we have available? Because I know that we have a site to build in the south, but do we have a site secure in the north at this point?
We do have some site locations in the north, and it does line up really well. If you remember the board, we had that brief discussion about the road ahead and the next few years looking to the north, and then after that, looking to the growth in the south. So it actually aligns very well with kind of what we're planning and what we're bringing to the board. So those narratives go, side by side, which they should. So yes.
Yeah, Mr. President. We've got to do some budgeting pretty quick here. To be safe for us, what would be a good percentage of growth? I'm really glad to hear that we're still talking about growth. But on the conservative end, what would be a safe number, do you think, as far as percentage on growth?
You're going to make me CFO of the district. I would say 0.
0. Okay.
0 or
Second
1.
question is, if I understand what you're saying on the projections that you've done, what we can anticipate is a actually decrease in growth over time with the primary, first, second, kinder, that kind of stuff. But we'll see a growth percentage-wise, and I'm guessing that's going to be per capita, on 7th, 8th grade, the more middle school ages.
I think, yeah. I mean, it's becoming a very much, especially south, a move-up housing market. So you'll definitely continue to see that pattern. However, a lot of the stuff that's coming online in the Citrus Road corridor, if interest rates were reasonable, are very affordable. It should be affordable to families.
Right.
And so I'm actually hoping that if we get a little more production housing going in the north, that we might kick K2 and 3-5 in the pants a little bit and get some growth out of them too.
And I hate to ask you to whip out a crystal ball and tell us, but if we were going to really get serious about building 9, should we anticipate it being more of a 6, 7, 8?
I don't think it's going to become that skewed. I really don't. I think you've got enough. One of the things Don looks at in his work is, do you have a variety of housing? A lot of districts have basically one product, and you guys don't. You really have a spectrum of housing. You could spend $300 to $3 million in this district, I believe. So that's an advantage, because then you're active in all climates. So.
And last question, we cannot really make any kind of educated guess as to what the residents are going to look like as far as the multiple family housing, right? We don't know if they're going to be families with children or not. We just don't know.
Unfortunately, right now it's a wild card because we don't have a track record. As soon as we start getting data, then we'll know. I just kind of feel like there's so much job growth going on out here too. That's the thing. It's not just people want to live
Lots of
out
distribution
here.
centers.
And so those jobs are going to create demand for housing that's appropriate for workforce.
Right. It's kind of what it looks like is going on now to me.
And right now, this is the only option for workforce housing.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I echo an earlier comment. The information you provide us really, really helps as far as our budgeting. So thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
They pretty much took all my questions. So I don't really have any questions. Thank you for the information. I will say, I know ESA was mentioned quite a bit tonight, and as that tends to be a sticking point, for public education, I think that what that does for us, even though it does make your job hard to figure out where people are going to go, as a district, I think that really helps us up our game to try to gain those students back, gain the confidence of the the people who live within our district, you know. And if we can do that, then hopefully we get an extra boost, a bump in these numbers. You know, the parents want to send their kids to our district, so.
Well, certainly time will tell.
It will.
And that's why I don't want to, that's why I was telling you honestly, this introduces something we don't know how it's going to play out.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
No problem. Thank you all very much.
Members, our next item on the agenda is 6.1 public comment. I'm informed we have one comment from Ms. Okay, good, I was right, just the one, I thought I had it, and that's Ms. Donnie Bond. Just as a reminder, you'll have 3 minutes, and in most circumstances, the board is not able to comment or respond.
Good evening.
And if I can ask you to just adjust the mic so online can hear as well.
Okay. Good evening. President Todd, Vice President Parks, board members, Dr. Monroe, and all of the staff. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak. I missed the December meeting, so I'm trying to catch up now with some gratitude. I'd like to thank the school board for being available to answer questions for me this year. I've been attending these meetings for over a year now, and I appreciate the time and intent and study that it requires of all of you. I'd like to thank President Todd and Chris Kenyon for coming to our home last fall to answer questions and explain the bond issues to many of our neighbors. Our neighbors appreciated being able to meet with you in a relaxed setting. And as you know, bonds help with building maintenance, and federal money received does not allow for that. So thank you again to Michael and Chris for the time that you spent with us. I'd also like to thank Superintendent Dr. Monroe for meeting with my husband and I for coffee last fall and discuss concerns that we had. He was most willing to have a discussion and answer questions with us, and we appreciate that. It made us feel very appreciated as members of this school district. Thank you, Dr. Monroe, for setting up a time to tour some of the elementary schools so that we can see firsthand what the specific needs are and how we as a community can help. The tour is scheduled for January 26th, so if there are others interested in signing up, please join us and let us know. We've also put this on Nextdoor, and you can see that posting under Donnie Bond and Dick Bond, my husband. Lastly, I'm excited to reiterate that Arizona has a dollar-for-dollar tax credit available to any of those who feel led to donate to the schools. If you're married filing joint, you can up to $400 and a single person $200. This tax credit is also, I'm sorry, we've also posted this on our Nextdoor website today, and we had over 1,200 views so far. I don't know that everyone's donated, but let's be hopeful. You do have until April 15th to take this credit on your tax return, and so the schools also have a tax form tab on their website, so it makes it very easy for you to do that. Now, we are doing a fundraising after speaking with President Todd about a specific need for Astoria Mountain Elementary School for their AV program, and they do a lot of wonderful programs. I'm hoping to see some. I haven't yet, but we plan to. So we're trying to encourage anyone that feels led to donate to the Astoria Mountain Elementary School fundraiser. They need AV equipment for their performances, but you must be specific when you fill out the form so that you choose the EMES, then bond equipment in the drop-down, and then specifically type in AV equipment for the arts program. I do have flyers with me to provide to the board after the meeting and for anyone else that's interested. I just want to thank you very much, and
Thank you. Members, our next item on the agenda is 7.1, the consent agenda. If there's anything you would like pulled, please let me know.
I'd like to pull item 7.3.
Okay, any others? Okay, hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 7.3.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the consent agenda with the exception of item 7.3.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second?
A motion, I have a second to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item 7.3. No discussion, I will call your vote. Board Member Parks,
Yes.
Board Member Aguirre,
Yes.
Board Member Bixler,
Aye.
Board Member Kenyon.
Aye.
I'm also, and I will show that approved 5 yes, 0 no. Move on to item 7.3, Board Member Aguirre.
I just had a question about contract/work agreement revision. What does it mean?
Malia and Karina are here, but we've been doing some audits in HR. So we've been doing some time audits and been doing some audits on contracts. And what we have noticed is back last spring, when all of the certified staff got, I believe I was told it was a 2% raise increase, there were some people who were forgotten. So what this is to make that right when we did our audit. And these were the people that they've been contacted that they were somehow missed and didn't get that 2%. So that makes up for that, that 2% that they missed last spring. Did I explain? Nope. Come on up.
Was an audit that we performed. It was the years of service increase that was given last year, giving up to 15 years. These people did not receive that in their contract this year, and you'll see them again next year to do, or next meeting to do a revision for a retro from last year as well. It was approved January 30th, I believe, to do the salary schedule to honor up to 15 years of service for new teachers this year. And we did a retro for those teachers to give them the years of service credit that were with the district that did not get that when they were hired. Unfortunately, these individuals did not get that, so we're making that adjustment now.
How did we find this out? An audit, or did somebody somebody say something?
Nope, this one was a strict audit that we were doing.
In-house audit? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Members, any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a motion in a second.
Mr. President, I move that we approve item 7.3, personal action item.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve 7.3. If there's no discussion, we'll call for your vote. Board Member Parks,
Yes.
Board Member Aguirre,
Yes.
Board Member Bixler,
Aye.
Board Member Kenyon.
Aye.
I'm also an aye. Will show that approved 5 yes, 0 no. Next up is item 8.1, discussion consideration of governing board policies JR and JRR, including implementation and policy enforcement. This is a discussion item only, and I think, Mr. Aguirre, you had some questions about this. You asked for this on the agenda.
Yeah, I just had questions about members of the public coming onto campus and taking pictures of students within a classroom setting, if you will, during the actual hours of the school day. Is that a violation of FERPA law? When the district is not authorizing that individual to take those pictures and publish them?
It wouldn't be FERPA. That's certainly not a FERPA issue because FERPA documents have to be maintained by the school district. Has to be taken by or collected by an agent of the district and maintained by the school district for it to be a FERPA issue. Okay. But this would be a school management issue for individuals to be able to come in and take public or pictures. But it's really up to the site administrator and what the event is happening.
It's not an event, just in school, just school, regular school day.
You know, I'd have to know the specific example of what you're talking about, Board Member Aguirre.
Well, it was brought to my attention that there was a school day that a board member went on school campus, took pictures, and then publicized them on social media.
Well, it's not a violation of FERPA, Mr. Aguirre, so if you want to file some kind of a complaint, you could do so. There's in the policy, it actually has a FERPA address for complaints. You can also file complaints with the Attorney General's office, and it could be investigated if there was but it would have to be a violation of either state law or federal law before they would really do something with it.
So I guess what I'm hearing then from our attorney is that somebody can come on campus, take photos of our children, and publicize them, and that's okay. Because that's what I'm hearing from you right now.
If you have a parent or a community member that is allowed on the campus and chooses to take photos, there is no law that prevents them from putting those on, posting them. There is no law on that. But if you want to manage it, you could create a policy. The board could create a policy, a separate policy, that would restrict that action, but it would have to be an action by the governing board.
Because I thought that I read somewhere that it had to do with, and forgive me, I'm losing my train of thought as far as what the word was that was used, but it had to do with publicity, using children's photos as publicity on for a commercial gain.
Well, I'm not aware of any specific law on that,
It was part of FERPA, that's why I'm asking.
No, it's not part of FERPA. Again, FERPA's restriction is for student records, something that's maintained.
Our student records, right?
If they're maintained by the school district.
Oh, so what you're saying then is, since somebody came on campus and took those photos and they're not an employee of the district,
If
that
they
means
weren't
that they-
taken by the district for an agent of the district and maintained by the district as a student record, then FERPA would not have any restriction over that.
when you say an agent of the district, what does that mean? Agent?
An employee would be one. You folks are agents of the district when you're sitting at the dais. When you're doing board action.
Understood. Okay.
And a board president would be an agent of the district when he's arranging the agenda with the board, with the superintendent, and or signing documents. And so would Mr. Parks if he is doing that for the board president.
Huh. So it seems like, just thinking out loud, it seems like maybe we as a district have an issue as far as parental rights, that maybe parents may not want people other than agents of the district taking photos and publicizing those photos of their children.
You could, like I said earlier, you could create a policy. The governing board could create a policy restricting that action, but you'd find a lot of parents that would be upset about that, I think, because they like to go to school activities and take pictures.
No, it's school activities, that's different, right? Because that's outside the classroom setting. And I agree with that 100%.
And that would also
What I'm
be,
saying is within a classroom setting, that's my major concern, is that when we have individuals coming onto campus taking photos of our children, I think that's a safety problem that we really may want to look at.
well, I suggest
Excuse me, Mr. President, our time's up on this.
I would just suggest that you try to create a policy with the board.
Would that be any different than when we do a news story, and we see this on the news every day, where there's news footage of students in a classroom?
Those folks do get permission from the site administrator to go in
but that's
and
all,
do that,
right?
right?
Okay.
It would be the same in that case. And as long as the site administrator and the teacher are okay with it, there's really no restriction.
If I could just make a comment, there's numerous times I've known of parents or myself go in and my daughter has a birthday party, so the teacher allows us to bring in cupcakes or something. I would be very careful as a board in trying to create a policy to limit this, as was said, and I wholeheartedly agree that's going to be, we're dancing a fine edge, and I know that responsible people should be very cautious about posting things that aren't of their own children. However, it's a slippery slope, and I don't think we want to go there unless we see actual violation occurring. So just be mindful of that.
Yeah, so the concern, right, is just exactly what you
Mr.
said.
Roy, I think your time was already
of
up on this issue.
I do apologize, but you actually can't silence a board member. We all know that. The concern is that we don't know our children's individual situations. That's my concern. And if we want to take pictures, if a parent wants to take pictures, if a community member wants to take pictures and publicize them, well, then what I would ask is that those pictures are turned over to the district. Let the district vet out those photos to make sure that there's no child in those pictures that hasn't signed a waiver, that their parents haven't signed that waiver, so that we know for sure that we're not putting a child in danger. Most importantly, foster children.
Mr. President, can I have the floor?
You may.
Have we had any complaints from parents on this?
Not that's come to my attention.
Yeah. So I'll put it to you this way: we're making an issue out of a non-issue, and it appears to me the only one that has a problem in this on this board is Mr. Aguirre, and I know he's sensitive about this, but you know, maybe you should talk to the teacher of your children and make sure that there's an issue. If you have an issue, that it's a personal issue, that you take care of it there, because I'm not going to create a board policy restricting parents from taking pictures in the classroom.
Okay.
Thank you. Next item is 8.2, approval to release RFQ 24-01-24, construction manager at risk, LESD number 25, school number 8. Mr. Young. If I can hold 1 second, I think we can get your mic turned on.
Mr. President, members of the board, as recommended, the governing board approve the following motion to issue request for qualifications 24-1-24 for a construction manager at risk for the contractor for school number 8. The new school will accommodate new residents and overflow from nearby schools.
Members, any questions? If not, we can take a motion.
Yeah, I had a question. Brian, did you first? No. Where are we building school number 8? What's the community called?
It's up in the north section of the school right now. We're looking at Amber Meadows, La Privada, donated a site up in there that we're working on.
Okay, so that's not finalized then? We don't have that finalized with that developer?
Mr. President.
Or both developers? I mean.
Correct. It's in motion right now, going through the stages of getting the donation approved.
Is it normal to not have that approved and then to approve an RFQ, not knowing that we have that locked in yet, a land site locked in the north?
Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Aguirre, Member Aguirre, yes, you can start to construct, even if you had to pick that school up and move it to a different site for whatever reason, you would have everything would be ready to go. And if there was whatever reason, something happened, we couldn't get that site, the drawings would be ready. We just have to site adapt it to another site, but everything would be ready to go in there wouldn't be anything, if we order electrical gear or anything like that, it would be moved at the new site. It would not, there wouldn't be anything put into the site that would not be able to move over to another site if it was needed to go there.
Okay. Yeah, just curious, because some of my concerns is that some of the requirements for the site in the north differ from other sites, especially when it comes to electrical switchgear and things of that nature that we're seems like we want to order it right away. So that would be my concern, of that those requirements would change and we don't have a developed site locked in.
Mr. President, Member Aguirre, they would not. It would be whatever would fit on that one site would fit on the next site.
I understand, but the requirements, I don't think the actual sites have the same exact requirements. That's my concern.
Right, there might be some different grading and drainage issues, utilities coming in, those kind of things, but there would be nothing to stop us from getting the planning of the school number 8 in motion to get it going so that we can hit it running when either that site's ready or another site is ready to go.
And we wouldn't see a financial impact, the district wouldn't?
For changing sites?
Yeah,
Correct.
none, zero.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Members with no further questions, we'll take a motion, a second, and then we can discuss further if we need to.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the release of RFQ 24-01-24, construction manager at risk for the LESD number 25, school number 8.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion, a second. If you have no further discussion, I'll call the vote. Board Member Parks.
Yes.
Board Member Aguirre.
Yes.
Board Member Bixler.
Aye.
Board Member Kenyon.
Aye.
I'm also an aye. Will show that approved 5 yes, 0 no. Next item is 8.3, discussion consideration to approve employee work calendar for school year 2025. Dr. Mohorn, our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources and Student Services, you're up. And it works.
Good evening, President Todd and Governing Board. Before you will see, it looks like 11 different work calendars that we are asking you to approve. It is everything from office managers to administrators to secretaries, health office. We really included everyone. Just a reminder that this is our second year doing the 4-day calendar. So we learned a lot this first year and made some tweaks as we went and just took note of what to change for this upcoming year. So I think we really got a good handle on it now. I will say I am going to pass around, this is a paper. I accidentally if you look down where it says fiscal year 25, the 10-month support staff work calendar, it's labeled right, but I accidentally uploaded the calendar before that twice. And this is just a paper copy of the correct one. I will update it also in board docs, so it'll be available there too.
And members, just for clarification on that, the supplemental materials are not required as part of our public posting, so those can be changed. The actual agenda item itself is correct, and we are staying on focus with that and on agenda. Are there any questions or discussions regarding these schedules? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve.
Mr. President, I motion that we approve the employee work calendars for school year 2025.
Mr. President, I second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the employee work calendars for school year 2025. If there is no discussion, we'll call for the vote. Board Member Parks.
Yes.
Sorry, it should be Vice President. It's going to take a while to get that in my head. Board Member Board Member Aguirre.
Yes.
Board Member Bixler.
Aye.
Board Member Kenyon.
Aye.
I'm also an aye. Will show that approved 5 yes, 0 no. Thank you to the staff who put all that together. We appreciate you. Item 8.4 is our next item on general business discussion, consideration of the board superintendent operating and communication protocol. Dr. Monroe.
Yeah, President Todd, Vice President Parks, members of the board. Last summer in 2023, President Todd, Vice President Parks, Member Kenyon, Member Bixler, and the cabinet, we met with an outside facilitator to talk about what kind of protocols and standard operating procedures did we want to put into place for the governing board superintendent team that involved communication as well as operating standards. It was a great meeting that happened in the late afternoon where we were able to brainstorm and discuss and talk about and develop these protocols of how we are going to work together. The item that's here before you was approved on Monday, July 31st, 2023, which included a final draft of the operating and communication standards that we strive to uphold as a governing board superintendent team. This document has also been reviewed by legal. So it's on the agenda in front of you tonight, and administration would recommend, if the board doesn't recommend any changes or send it back, to reaffirm and renew our operating and communication protocol for this upcoming calendar year, as well as this next school year. And my thought would be to bring this to the board annually after the organizational meeting, as we've reorganized tonight, just to reaffirm or change anything that we might see is off. I think it's a very positive document. It's been posted on our webpage. I've actually been asked to share it with other superintendents and boards from other districts because they really like some of the language and how it came together. So again, it's what we strive to do and what we strive to be. We may not be perfect as a governing board superintendent team, but I feel very strongly that this is a very positive document for the board to, again, reaffirm their support and renew through a vote tonight.
Members, any questions?
I have more of a comment. I really like this document, and I'm glad to hear that other superintendents are interested in this as well, because it's something that we, especially new board members coming on, being able to put your eyes at something and just read down this list of do's, don'ts, who has what's in charge, how to communicate, all that kind of stuff. It really breaks it down and makes it easy to digest. So members of the public, if you're not sure what the relationship is between the superintendent and the governing board, I encourage you get on the website and look at this document, because it should hopefully clarify a lot of questions that people might have. But I'm very much in favor of this document.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I just had a question. I have a concern where it says surprises to the board or superintendent will be the exception, not the rule. There should be no surprises at a board meeting. We agree to ask the board president or the superintendent to place an item on the agenda instead of bringing it up unexpectedly at the meeting. What does that mean?
I think we want to make sure that we follow the open meeting law, which we do a really good job of. I would never want to put the board in a position of bringing up brand new information to the board that maybe I haven't provided background on to the board and say a board update. And I would expect the same thing from the board as well. And so I think as we stick to the agenda, and I know sometimes I have to be corralled in, and hopefully I've been able to provide background and data for the board to be able to make educated decisions, then there's no surprises. There's no grandstanding. No one's trying to make anyone look bad or anything like that, but we're trying to move forward as a team. And so I know continually in the board updates, I'll ask each one of you, do you need to meet? Do you want to talk? Do you have questions? Are there things I can answer? And that way I can help you have the right information you need to make an educated vote and have the right data, as opposed to being caught off guard with questions in a board meeting that you could have presented to me, so that we can have really good answers and work forward together in a positive manner. So I think that would be my answer to that.
Because but the way I read this is that a governing board member can't ask for an agenda item to be put on a future agenda. That's how I read this. Because that's actually what it says.
Yeah, maybe we need to clarify. I don't read it like that. But I mean, we could add some clarifying language if the board so chooses, but I don't read it like that on that one.
Dr. Monroe, Mr. President, I had the same feeling when I read that particular item. I don't think it completely carried the essence of what we had talked about at that point. So I agree. I think it would put us in a position where we couldn't add agenda items, which is one of the agenda items on this agenda.
So if I may, this may be exactly what this is about. So the two board members have questions. Did you surface this prior to this meeting, or is this now a surprise that you see something and you're not bringing it forward? Because district staff could have recognized that and heard that and been working on some possible proposed language change. And that's more how I read the surprises to the board, or the superintendent will be the exception, not the rule.
Okay, so now I'm hearing that board members have to ask questions before a board meeting?
Well, it's always a good job to come to a board meeting prepared on the agenda and surface any questions you may have.
It has to be an issue of being prepared. I think it has to be a question. When a board member asks a question, I think sometimes it's so that the public knows what that question is. Because if it's in an email, the only way that the public knows that the question was actually asked is if they do a public records request.
You can actually still ask the question in public, and oftentimes I've asked Dr. Monroe a question and then said, I'm going to ask that in a meeting, but I want you to be prepared for this question. Oftentimes I don't even get the answer when I ask him until the meeting time, but I just surface them so that they can do the proper research. But if you have proposed language you'd like to add to it, please make the motion and add the proposed language, and we can vote on it.
Also, the other question I do have is for legal counsel. What happens if a board member doesn't follow this document?
We talked about this before. You brought it up a number of months ago when it was first adopted. The fact of the matter is this is a document, internal document from the governing board. And so enforcement of it is your responsibility, each one of you. I mean, you could file a complaint, but it's not a violation of law. So the Auditor General or the Attorney General's office isn't going to do anything with it.
Okay.
It's really an internal document that you manage yourselves.
Okay, thank you.
Members, is there recommended language change that you would like to see? We can take that under advisement, consideration, and you can even make a motion for that change with the approval of the rest of the document.
No, I just think that this was, we called it board protocol, tried to adopt something a while back, and that was very strongly opposed by yourself and Mr. Parks. So I just find it ironic that now all of a sudden it's okay to implement a board protocol.
Well, it's not all of a sudden, it was implemented over 6 months ago.
Mr. President, I make the motion that we reaffirm and renew the operating and communication protocol for school year 2024-25.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to reaffirm and renew the operating communications protocol for school year 2024-2025. There's no more discussion. I'll call the vote.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
If I could ask one, I'm not clear on where we stand about it. Adding agenda items to future board meetings. Is that okay at the time of a board meeting?
I will be on record and say it's my opinion. It's perfectly fine. I also said if anybody would like to change the language, they could make the language change, a proposed language change for that topic. Nobody spoke up. Board members Kenyon and Vice President Parks moved the motion.
I'd recommend that you'd look at board policy on that, and you'll find that it's protected.
I think it's 100% protected, and I see no reason why you wouldn't be able to bring up an item.
Why I
Do
question this
you
document.
concur with that, legal?
That's the reason it's placed on the agenda. So of course you can bring up agenda items.
Okay, we've got that clarified, I believe. So with that, we have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. Board Member Parks?
Yes.
Board Member Aguirre?
No.
Board Member Bixler?
On your promise, yes.
Board Member Kenyon?
Aye.
I'm also an aye. We'll show that approved 4 yes, 1 no. Item number 8.5, discussion consideration to approve the governing board meeting schedule for school year 24-25. Dr. Monroe.
Hi, President Todd, Vice President Parks, members of the board. The governing board annually sets the calendar for upcoming governing board meetings. Historically, these meetings have been held on the second and fourth Mondays of the month with a few exceptions. So attached is a proposed calendar following kind of this established pattern of meetings from the past. The boards can discuss this, make revisions. Administration would recommend approval of the governing board meeting schedule for the next school year. That would start in July. Let me point out a few things as you're looking at that schedule. A few of the revisions is the 2 July board meetings have been moved to Wednesday nights. The reason that was in July in the summer was to better work with our business department for budget approval, as well as our HR department in approving people to be able to start to work for the beginning of the school year. Also, I wanted to mention that on this new calendar, as you look at some of these circles, in order for the board to plan, if Monday night continues to be a good night for the board meetings, we kind of mapped out when we could have work study sessions, which would be the second meeting of the month. We would start at 4:30. And, if there's nothing for us to work study through, we'll cancel that. But this way the board can plan when they know they would need to be here from a 4:30 to 5:30 board meeting, if that works for the board. It does follow the pattern this next school year of the second and fourth Monday. And again, just a reminder for the board that you're very well aware, the board can always call a meeting when needed, as long as we just follow the open meeting law process. So again, administration would recommend approval of the governing board meeting schedule for the school year 24-25.
I just had one question about the work study. Sorry, go ahead. The starting of the work study, is there any way that can start at 5:30?
That's simply up to whatever the board decides. You push back to 5:30, then you push back going later. So and I know board members have commitments, but that would be up to the board. I just know it looks like the history of board meetings have been on Monday nights. So whatever the collective voice of the board would be, we can respond and do that.
Well, and I guess with that question, one other question to legal, is a work study session considered a meeting of the board, official board business, and has to follow open meeting law? And if board members aren't present, aren't able to attend, that could work into the attendance of board members? Is all that?
A work study session is a more informal meeting than a regular board meeting.
Understood.
And you don't make there's not a decision-making meeting. You don't adopt or take any formal action in a work study meeting. It's an informational meeting, but it still has to be posted as a board meeting.
So what I'm asking though is if a board member is unable to attend because of the time that those work studies take place, can that be used against a board member as far as abandonment?
Not that I'm aware of. I wouldn't say that work studies carry that same weight.
Okay, so you understand what I
Yeah.
believe it's county superintendent who is in charge of that?
Well, there's in the statute, there's a certain period of time. If you miss a certain number of board
Yes,
meetings, then
that's
you can
what
be
I'm referring
replaced.
to, yes.
But I don't think the work study would work that way, but I technically haven't actually looked into that. So let me look into it a little bit more to make sure that that's what I'm saying is accurate.
Okay. Yeah, because I really struggle to get here at 4:30. Apparently, I'm the only one who has to work from a certain time to a certain time, which I wish I had the luxury of not, believe me. And that's why I asked that. Like, I actually have to take off work to be here at 4:30.
Sure.
And I've expressed this to you actually before too, right?
Yeah, whatever. Again, that's why it's brought here, the calendar, to be discussed and talked about. Board members' lives change. They have work commitments. People are very busy, so that's why it's here for the board to discuss. And again, we'll do whatever the board would direct us to do.
So members, another thing that could be considered is doing work sessions on a different Monday night altogether. And we could do those at 5:30 as well, if that would suit schedules. Or we can just start work sessions at 5:30 and plow through the night. I think the city of Scottsdale Unified, they do their work sessions at 10 o'clock in the morning, I believe. Their board meetings are in the evening and their work sessions are at 10 a.m., which seems tough for some of us.
I think it's important to have as many board members here as possible, so that means moving to 5:30, that'd be fine with me. If the meetings run to 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, I've done it before.
I have no problem with that. I do have, if we think that'll be okay to go to start at 5:30. I have one more question. Certainly we've talked about this before. Monday nights appear to definitely be the best night to have board meetings. It doesn't really interfere with any of the extracurricular things that take place. But we do conflict with the high school, and I think we have a growing number of parents who try to attend or watch online 2 different meetings. Would it be advisable of this board to consider, the high school has 1 meeting a month, we have 2. Would it be advisable to switch Mondays to not try to force a community member to decide between which meeting to go to? Sometimes it's easy. One has a more pressing issue, but there's times where both boards have important business, and I feel like if we switched our dates around just a little bit, if the board is interested in that, we might better serve our constituent base.
I don't have a problem with it as long as it doesn't interfere with administration and anything you guys got going on.
Does that impose any problems for you at all?
So when would you propose, what are you thinking when you say that comment? When would you propose?
I mean, typically our meetings are about 2 weeks apart, so if we, instead of the 1st and the 4th, we'd be it's really that first, I think the first Monday is when the high school meets, if I remember right.
Is
They
it
meet
the first
Monday of the month?
Do you remember? Is it the first Monday? Do you remember, Minnie, when we were looking at it?
I don't think we ever meet on the second Monday, do we? Is that when we meet? Let me look.
No, we meet on the second and the fourth Mondays.
So it must be, maybe it's the
typically.
second. I think it's our first meeting of the month interferes with their meeting. I think theirs is the second. So if we did first and third, or first and, it's really that second Monday that interferes with them that I'd like to try to give our voting members of the public a chance to attend all the meetings they want to.
And this is stating the obvious, not a super timely manner. This doesn't go into effect until July. So if the collective voice of the board is to go back, we can bring another schedule with the first and third, or bring 2 options possibly, or we could certainly do that. Minnie?
President Todd and governing board members and Dr. Monroe, it says on their website that typically it's held on the second Monday of every month at 6:30.
1 meeting a month.
1 meeting a month.
So if we were to go the first and third, we would avoid them,
It sounds like it.
or the first and fourth, although then the fourth, we don't always have a fifth, so maybe the first and third. Again, I just throw it out for discussion amongst the board. Just as the work session starting at 5:30, I don't have a problem with a 5:30 start. And I just would like to look at not conflicting with the high school.
Mr. President, I would like to look at a first and third with a 5:30 start time. I'd like to see what that calendar looks like.
Okay, so I think we can table this and ask staff to put together for the next meeting, perhaps a first and third
Okay,
schedule.
so let me just make sure I understand. So look at a new calendar with the first and the third Monday of the month with a 5:30 start time. And if there's a work study, it's going to be a 5:30 start time across the board, whether there's a work study or not.
Yeah, and I think the 5:30 works well. People just get that in their mind as well, and a work session once in a while, it starts at 4:30. I know I've looked up a couple times myself and realized I was about to be late, so I can understand somebody that's not trying to run the meeting and just attend might really run into that. And I think Board Member Aguirre brings up good points for work schedules. As I've always said, I look for policy that and plans for the future, and this board could change and have one day 5 board members who are seated working 8 to 5 jobs, which would make 4:30 difficult. So I think we should future-proof as much as possible.
Okay, we can bring that back at a future board meeting for the board to look at and compare your schedules with as well.
Perfect. So, board members, if you could somebody could make a motion to table this until the next meeting, where we can look at maybe compare
President?
and contrast schedules.
I move that we table the discussion and approval of the board meeting schedule until we have a presentation of a calendar that reflects the first and third meeting date for the board with a consistent 5:30 p.m. starting time across the board.
Have a second?
Second.
Have a motion, I have a second to table this until such time that the district staff can provide us an alternative meeting schedule of the first and third Mondays with a 5:30 p.m. start across the board. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. Vice President Parks?
Yes.
Board Member Aguirre?
Yes.
Board Member Bixler?
Aye.
Board Member Kenyon?
Aye.
I'm also an aye. We'll show that approved 5 yes, 0 no. And we'll move to item 8.6, discussion consideration for the approval of lead grounds position. Dr. Stephanie Mahorn.
President Todd, governing board members, we are recommending that the governing board approve the following motion to approve the lead grounds position. And actually, it's not for the 24-25. We're hoping it can be yet this year. Is a hope. One of we have a couple reasons, but ensuring that our grounds are well maintained, all of us on the board have talked about that a lot. Bringing it in-house, as with all positions, like some of our special ed positions we are shopping out. Bringing it in-house will help us save money. And so bringing this position right now, and Mr. Young can talk more about it right now, Yellowstone has what's called a day porter. We are asking to replace it with this leads groundkeeper position, and I will let Mr. Young talk more about that as well.
Board, currently with the Yellowstone contract, they have a day porter that is on contract for $90,000 a year, and his position is going around looking at the sites and finding out what is going wrong with them. And then he calls the supervisor and they send someone out to repair it at an additional cost to the district. We're looking at putting a lead grounds person, somebody who has experience in sports fields, irrigation, time clocks, fertilizer, the whole thing, and bring them in for less money than what we're paying Yellowstone at the current rate, and bring them in and start rejuvenating the fields at the schools to make them look better. It'll be under district control, also be a liaison with the Yellowstone cutting crews and stuff like that to make sure that things are being scheduled and everything's getting taken care of on time to get our schools looking good, but also safe and the fields ready to use at all times.
Members, any questions?
I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, we put this position out before, and it was out for months. And nobody took it, so that's why they brought on what was brought on. So what's changing? Or are we just gonna hope for the best? I mean, I'm all for it, don't get me wrong.
Go ahead.
I actually don't think that the governing board approved this position in the budget interest. So this is a new position that we have not posted prior. I'm looking at HR to make sure that's correct.
Right.
Not a ground lead.
Is that what I'm thinking?
Yeah.
And there's always wishing and hopeful as we put it out there. Hopefully we can attract good talent. So unfortunately, that seems to be all positions nowadays, that we can attract high quality talent. But with Bob's network and, with a new regime here, hopefully we can attract the best who want to come and work with us. So yeah, some hopeful thinking. Yeah.
And the 4-day week does make a difference in hiring and recruiting for different positions. So yes, we're very hopeful.
Okay.
Okay, members, just a bit of housekeeping for staff as well. Our agenda is specifically for 24, 25. So if we're going to find somebody sooner, we'll need to bring that back to the board for approval because we're locked in. Well, actually, discussion consideration for approval of lead grounds position, that's just a recommended action, so that doesn't have to take place. So I think, Mr. Dangerfield, are we okay if they post that sooner, or do we need to bring that back if they're going to do it this year? It's item 8.6.
I think it would just depend on the motion.
So, okay, so we don't have to make it for 24, 25. We could just make the full. Well, she said they're hoping to get it sooner. Okay, so we just drop out the 24, 25. Okay. All right.
Mr. President, I make a motion to approve the lead ground position.
You have a motion to approve the lead ground position.
Second?
I have a second. When I call your name, please specify your vote. Vice President Parks.
Yes.
Board Member Aguirre.
Yes.
Board Member Bixler.
Aye.
Board Member Kenyon.
Aye.
I'm also an aye. Will show that approved. 5 yes, 0 no. Next up, item 9.1, board comments or agenda topic requests.
I'm sure it'll be a update here shortly, but I would like to request, I don't know if it's really an update or just a agenda item for discussion, information about our experience we had just a little bit ago, 4:30, the electric bus, and what that entails and what could be in the works for that in the future.
Yeah, I think that's forthcoming. Any other topics? Any further comments? Hearing none, we will add that request to the agenda. I think that is important to talk about, future of the new facility as well. Next up will be item 10, 10.1, upcoming board meetings. Members, we have meetings currently on January 29th, 2024. We have one on February 12th, 2024. We have one on February 26th, March 11th, and March 25th. Members, we do have a work session on January 29th. It's currently, I believe, published for 4:30. I do believe I can process or request that that be moved to 5:30 if that better benefits the board members. I don't see any reason to hold off another 6 months before we implement that. So if that works for you guys, I will set the agenda to start at 5:30 for the work session on January 29th. Okay. Next up is item 11.1, adjournment of the meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. When I call your name, please specify your vote, unless anybody wants to discuss. Okay. Vice President Parks.
Yes.
Board Member Aguirre.
Yes.
Board Member Bixler.
Aye.
Board Member Kenyon.
Aye.
I'm also an aye. We'll show that approved. 5 yes, 0 no, and the meeting is adjourned.